Hey YouTube, we're back for another episode of Decks on Deck, and this week we're bringing you something different. This is a blue-red tempo deck. Sorry, I'll stop messing with the camera. So this is a blue-red tempo deck that essentially utilizes the graveyard and throwing instants and sorceries into said graveyard. So we essentially have a very light mana base. We have, I believe, so that's going to be 4, that's going to be 8, it's going to be 12, 16, and 18 lands. Now we're only playing 6 fetches here, which isn't a huge deal because we actually have so much card draw within the deck that getting the lands we need isn't typically a problem. So our lands are actually just going to be 3 Steam Vents right here, and then 1 Hollowed Fountain at the end, which is going to come into play for sideboard tech. Because our deck essentially hates Rest in Peace, and we need to be able to fight against it. Our basics are going to be 3 islands and 1 mountain. We have 2 Spirebluff Canals here, and then 2 manlands. We're going to have a Fairy Conclave and a Wandering Fumarole, and then a playset of your favorite 6 fetches that work. Now, regarding our spells, and essentially the juice of the deck, we're going to have playset of Lightning Bolts, 2 Serum Visions, and 2 Spell Pierce. Now, the Serum Visions could have been a 4 of, and we could have not played the Spell Pierces, but it honestly comes down to how much interaction you want. And we do pack a whole bunch of counter magic, but having that 1 blue counter anything you need is extremely useful, especially when somebody's trying to jam a Lily on turn 3 when you only have 1 available mana. Now regarding our card draw, we do have the 2 Serum Visions, and we're also going to have the 4 Opt and 4 Thought Scours, Thought Scour being the best one in this deck because we are trying to fuel our graveyard. Our creature sweep is going to be pretty simple. We're going to have 3 Snapcaster Mages and 2 Stormchaser Mages in the 2 mana slot. Now the Snap's pretty obvious with a graveyard full of instants and sorceries. And the Storm Chasers essentially just act as really, really good beaters. Even if they only have the 1 power, and sometimes they only crack in for 1 turn, they still get a whole lot of stuff done, and it synergize really well with the deck more than anything else. Next comes our Counter Magic Sweep. So we did see the 2 Spell Pierces, but we're also going to have 3 Mana Leaks, 4 Remands, and a Negate. The Negate essentially works as a catch-all. The rest of the stuff just helps us power through. Remand acts as the best counterspell that we have just because it buys us time and it fuels the graveyard quite efficiently. Our 3-drop slot is going to be 2 Angers of the Gods. Now, those actually interact with our Stormchaser Mages because as soon as you cast them, it'll trigger Prowess, thus giving you 4 toughness and letting your Stormchaser Mages survive an entire board wipe. Plus, it's an instant / sorcery, so you can throw it in the yard, helps power, you don't mind hitting it off of the Thought Scour. And you'll notice that the top end of our deck plays really, really well with Anger of the Gods. The best example of this is the next card, which is going to be Enigma Drake. So this is one of the newer cards that I saw that could really be utilized with the strategy. Enigma Drake most of the time ends up hitting for 7 or 8, and having a 7 or 8 flyer for 3 mana with 4 toughness on it is something you really can't scoff at in Modern right now. Sure, he dies to a push with a Revolt, but like, there's a lot of ways around it. And you can essentially just have an enormous efficient beater. If only he had haste. Now, to add insult to injury, with huge power on something like an Enigma Drake, we have the Runechanter's Pike, giving +X+O equal to the amount of instants and sorceries in our yard. This, paired on to a Stormchaser Mage with haste, is extremely good. You can just throw it on quick for 2 mana and crack through what would essentially be the game. It makes it a super live top deck, and you can just throw it onto any creature you need, including like a Snapcaster Mage, if you just need to crack in for a whole bunch of damage. And lastly, we have the top end of the deck, some newer cards here that are being broken. We're going to have the Cryptic Serpents all the way in the top corner over here. We're going to be playing 3 Cryptic Serpents. The easiest big fatty in our deck to cast. All we need is 5 things in the yard and it becomes blue-blue for a 6/5, which is value. I think this is probably the best home form in Modern. I'm enjoying playing him, and I always smile when I get him. You don't mind getting him in duplicates most of the time because you aren't playing a 4 of, so you know you're not going to draw a 3rd. And normally, once the game progresses, you can have him out by like turn 3 or turn 4 or turn 5. Like, you just essentially clog up the board, and you get to start dominating, getting over with your flyers. Then we also have the Bedlam Revelers, which also function with type of the same synergy. Kind of the same kind of idea going on here, but here we get to refresh our hand. People wanted me to play 4 Revelers in the deck when they first saw it, but having 2 Revelers in hand is essentially like super unsynergistic, and you never want to be able to discard a Reveler to another Reveler. Then essentially to cover our ass, we're playing a PK. One PIKE and a LAR that you'll see in the bottom right hand corner. That's going to be quite useful at gumming up the board, getting over with flyers. We can also blow up our Runechanter's Pike with the PK ability for extra 2 damage, and we can equip the flyers with the Runechanter's Pike to crack in for huge damage. So that's essentially the deck. It synergizes really well around the instants and sorcerers in the graveyard theme. Now the sideboard essentially works to combat things that hate us. So we're going to start things off with a simple extra Runechanter's Pike in the corner here. Now that's essentially just trying to change our clock and impact the game completely differently by like just having permanent threats on the board that we can equip. Here we're going to have a Palestine, which destroys all enchantments, and you gain 1 life for each enchantment destroyed this way. And you'll notice that from here to around here, these are all just hate cards that hate on Rest in Peace. So Palestine destroys enchantments. This is Byforce, which blows up artifacts, which does kind of play into people trying to mess with our graveyard, but you know, we can get around most artifacts. Some of them can be a pain, for Aftergir's Cage or the Relic of Progenitus, but we can still do okay. It's also in there for the affinity matchup, because quick matches are really tricky, and we do have the 2 angers in the main, but you also want to be able to blow up their creatures quite efficiently. Next, 2 Wear and Tears, things that are also going to save us from Rest in Peace and help in the affinity matchup. 1 Fragmentize, which is essentially going to be doing the same, and 2 Ratchet Bombs, which are essentially hopefully going to be set to 2, blow up Rest in Peace, and I can start fueling my graveyard. Next, we're going to have a 3rd Anger the Gods, which is going to be coming in for the creature matchups. Elves, Affinity, Merfolk, anything that's trying to go wide, we can stop and just up the amount of angers we have and just get in with our pure strategy and stop them from going wide. Next, we're going to have 3 Blood Moons, because Tron is not a fun fucking matchup and nobody enjoys it. Therefore, we have Blood Moon, so we can have a decent chance against Tron, along with our counterspells, which do allow us to play very well against Tron in certain scenarios, but the Blood Moons really allow us to power through. Then we're going to follow it up with 2 other counterspells. We're going to have an Izzet Charm and a 3rd Spell Pierce. So, that's the deck. It's, I think we had a name for it. I'm trying to remember it. Essentially just Pike Graveyard, or a blue-red Pike. So, that'd be the deck. Take it out, give it a shot, feel free to comment, and once again, have a great day. This is Decks on Deck.